Okay, so basically this show is all about discussing what this show is going to be, including perhaps the title. So we're not live now, but ideally I will post this as our first episode, which perhaps no one will see until we become famous and they go back and see, wow, look how primitive their technology was back then. Cool. So I may be like pausing because I'm pushing buttons as I do this, but I'm trying to close this one window on the side. Oh, there we go. Close. Okay, cool. So my first vision was to talk about hacker spaces and stuff going on in the hacker community. And the main goal was because I want to get more involved. And I'm have never really had a home hacker space. I guess the closest would be the one in San Francisco, but I wasn't really there when it started, and I left San Francisco before it started, and then I moved back, and then when I moved back I was too busy to go there much. But it doesn't I don't know, I guess basically the goal is just to get more involved in the hacker community. So and I know
it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Just from like thinking, like reflecting on what you're saying, I think hacker spaces, maker spaces are often, if not always, places for people who have time on their hands and who feel the need to let's say create something, and potentially feel that they or cannot do it by themselves or don't want to do it by themselves, so want to kind of work together with people or bounce off ideas to others in that trend, like not formally having a team, but more having a family, and less rules. But I think the first point is the most important one. I think maybe our situation in Shenzhen is a little bit different because people come to Shenzhen for a particular reason. I mean, almost nobody who is a member at our makerspace is local, is a local or living here. I mean, the percentage is very low. In general, people come to Shenzhen because they want to develop a product or they want to manufacture and visit factories, and they have a visa for China for 1 month or 2 months. And during the time, they want to have that living room where they can hang out with like-minded people. But also there, the same rule apply. They would only be at the hackerspace on moments when they don't have to visit a factory. So that they are busy because they're actually actively busy on that product development, but they only use the space in the time that they don't have any other programmed or scheduled activities to do. And if I look at the spaces in Europe, which I've visited, then I see people who have, for example, a daytime job and come after their job or in the weekends, whatever, in their free time, they come to hang out at the space. And a lot of them have things to do, but a lot of them do things which are not necessarily for money. They do it either for fun or they want to learn a technique, or they do it because they need to have that family again, like those friends, that brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever it is, what they're looking to fulfill, which they can't find at home or anywhere else. That is my feeling about what I see in this space.
Yeah.
For me also, it was like I had an idea for a product, and at that moment I didn't want to have a team and a company to build that product. It was very early stage, and I just wanted to learn how a 3D printer works and how a CNC machine works, so I could go about prototyping that product by myself, and then with a prototype in my hand, see if there is a market for this, or if I can get investment or crowdfunding for my product idea. So it was really just looking for people who can teach me, to show me like how does 3D printer work, and do things together, and a little bit take you by the hand in the first time or the first few times until you know how to do that, and then just go do it by yourself without having to invest in that equipment at home and watch videos online to see how things work. You do it in a membership, in a space where all the machines are there, and most important, where the people are there who can guide you and teach you.
Interesting. So you're saying it's a lot about the community. I mean, the tech is definitely part of it, but I always have people say, so what is a hackerspace? And it's always really difficult to define, because it's not like the thing I always come back to is it's sort of like a gym membership for tech, but that's only sort of like one flavor of hackerspace. Like, what would you say is like, I mean, this might not even be the good question, but like, what is the goal of a hackerspace? Or do they all just have different goals?
I probably didn't visit enough to know all the different goals, if there are. I think it's an interesting question also because of the choice of words. And so when I started Troublemaker, we didn't use the word hackerspace, and that's not
okay.
I'm not sure if that is for any reason. It's just like the people who I met before that were talking about a makerspace, and I mean, if that's the word what people use, you automatically take that over. You don't think twice about it. And also the Make organization in America wasn't bankrupt yet in that time. So Make and like Maker Faire, things like that were very popular things. Make magazine. So in our situation, it was Makerspace. And I've got this question several times from people, either like we got a lot of people visiting from abroad, and I'm talking about not being makers or hackers. I'm talking about business delegations and reporters, journalists, or even government think tanks dropping by to pick our brain about how we see developments happening in the world around us. And I don't know if that's a thing at different hacker spaces, but I mean, with us, it happens very regularly, a couple of times a month, basically.
So you have journalists come in, and you're sort of like the source. They're like the tour guide for them in a way.
Yes.
Interesting.
The funny thing with us, and I have to say because with COVID, the borders of China are closed, and so if nobody can enter China, the business model is basically gone. And that doesn't mean that the space is gone, because the space is still there and people are using it. But now it's only the people who are local here or who are at least living here. So maybe they're Chinese people, or they are foreign people who are here full time. But a lot of people who live here full time, they don't need a shared space. Like buying equipment in China is not extremely expensive. So I mean, if you live here, you live here for a reason, and sometimes that is technical reason. So if you are a technical person and you need less that community aspect, you probably just buy the equipment and work from home, or you have it at your office, or you have an R&D team already. So the market here for a makerspace or a hackerspace during COVID is very small. But
Interesting.
What I noticed is that when we started out in May 2016, we held an opening party, and the only thing what we did was we offer free beer and free pizza. And we had 250 people on our event. We also had sent out how you call that, a press release,
right?
And we had 4 newspapers joining us like an hour before the event. So we gave a press conference, and from that day on, it was almost every week or bi-weekly, we had journalists and documentary makers and busloads of bloggers from Japan coming to see that makerspace started by 4 foreigners in Shenzhen, located in Huaqiangbei, the largest electronics market in the world. And that was, in the beginning it was news, and later it just became a resource of information. It's like you go to the Oracle in the ancient Greek times, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So I mean, I don't know if it's probably a matter of being in a market of one. I mean, there were no. Chaiho was another good makerspace. I mean, the only actually real makerspace I knew in Shenzhen. Like we visited like 25 makerspaces in that time, and 20 out of them didn't have a workshop, didn't have a lab with machines, and they called themselves a makerspace. They were just a co-work space, because that's how they got the government grants. And from the other 5, 4 had the lights off, the machines were broken, and the management didn't know that the machines were broken. There was certainly no community or anybody who could teach me anything. And the only positive difference was Chaiho, which was the first one in Shenzhen. And they were actually really good. They were a real makerspace. I mean, there were people working on paper rockets, which were suspended by cotton wool smoke with LED strings in them that blinked. So you saw the smoke blinking. It's like you see a rocket being launched in a curve. The point is, like, I wanted to develop a product, and I didn't want to tinker with paper and cotton wool and blinking LEDs. So even though they were actually a real makerspace, it was not what I was looking for. I was looking for a place with engineers, designers, which would be my soundboard to bounce idea off and get sound advice, professional advice. And that's the first thing what we did. I mean, we used 2 months to decorate the room. So we had 2 rooms. One was for sitting. But so we rented 1 room in an existing co-work space who wanted to be a makerspace. And they also had a room which they call laboratory, but it was just a room with office desk and some hand tools. And we used 2 months to kind of redecorate that room into a real lab. And then we had our opening party. And then we were a makerspace in a co-work space. But the co-work space is large. I mean, that's like 30 rooms. And they were on top of one of the most important market buildings. And that top means we had a rooftop garden of 5,500 square meters,
right,
where we could do events. So, I mean, the situation was perfect. The investments were very low, and we had one room for which we didn't have to pay because we would share the lab with everyone there, which was our purpose already. I mean, the lab is for sharing, and it's not for us. It's not like our R&D room. So we only had to pay for one room. So that was an easy start. But I think, yeah, so what we did is we invited the news, we invited everybody who we already knew in the community. We had 250 people show up, and that got traction. And from there on, we saw, like, first it was every weekend, we saw couples and people coming in every Saturday and Sunday, looking at the space. So people who would have a daytime job. And then slowly, when the word got out, people would discover us for being their, let's, second hotel room. So, I mean, you come to Shenzhen, you book a hotel, but then where are you gonna work on your project? Right. So you wouldn't do that in your hotel room, but you do that at Troublemaker. So in that sense, we were in. Oh yeah, and that's what I want to say. Like, from day one, we invited engineers. So it began with one electronic engineer. A little bit later, we had one industrial designer. People who would be working from home, who had difficulty to get access to clients. And I said to them, you know what? Just come do your thing here with us. You know, I won't charge you anything for being a member. But if anyone asks you something, just answer that question. If they like your answer and they ask you to do work for them, do the work, agree on a price. And if you earn money from that, just share a little bit with us so we can pay the rent.
Wow.
And that, of course, it was a very slow start, but I mean, it worked. So within a certain amount of time, we had several engineers working from our place, either full-time or the same people actually that are part of the community that came there for 1 or 2 months. Now, most of them didn't pay their small part, but that's not the point. Like, the point was not necessarily to have a business out of that at that moment. The point was to create that resource which was so desperately needed. Where you can ask for help to professionals, also get like professional sourcing advice when you're in a jungle. I mean, you come to Shenzhen, you're in a freaking jungle, and I mean, how are you going to? So people would advise you, and that is of course tremendously valuable. But we were never able to like monetize on that part. Like, still we grew crazy. I mean, in 2019, we had like 50% of the co-work space was rented by people who either we brought in or by ourselves. So we had 3 laboratory rooms and 2 community rooms, that is 5. And another 10 were like rented by people. But we wouldn't ask them to rent from us because, again, the idea there is to be a community tool. And if I have to rent from my landlord and then rent that to you, there is time and effort involved, and then I need to raise the price. While if you just go to the front desk, you can get the same room for a lower price. So why should I try to be in between and do something what doesn't add any value to you while raising the cost? It just doesn't make sense to me. So I would say, you know, rent that room from the front desk and just be part of the community. And that's what they did. So, I mean, and that community, again, attracted other people. And then the thing, what actually made us earn money, but it only started like 2018, were those tours and delegations and workshops by like business delegations. Those we could charge because they come for another reason. Like, we had universities with students who wanted to do workshops. We had business delegations from incubators worldwide who wanted to do workshops. And for those we could charge. because we had a 1 day or 2 day program for them. So that's what eventually what made made it a little bit profitable. It wasn't there yet, but like 2020 was expected to be the real.
Right.
2019 was kind of profitable, but no salaries paid yet, and we expected to be able to do that in 2020. And before that, we were just sustainable, and I think that is already a real big thing. If you're living in a really commercial environment like Shenzhen, and you're actually sustainable from day one, first by putting in your own money, but then within no time being able to at least pay the bills from your income, from your revenue.
So are you able to make money now? Are you paying the bills? I know you just moved recently. Or has COVID shut that all down?
Yes, we're not monetizing on Troublemaker at the moment. So the community is mostly online now because there is a small local community, and there is still a big international community. But all those people are online. They know each other. There is not necessarily a need for an organization like Troublemaker to help them do what they need to do. It's not a hackerspace in that sense anymore, like where you, I mean, technically we could do a lot of online events and things like that, and we sometimes do. But I think the real charm of a hackerspace is not so much the online events, but the in-person events and the community events, which we also still do. But again, like with the borders closed, that is probably 60% locals who are not necessarily makers or hackers. They're people who just want to hang out with other people. And we still celebrate that. I mean, it's a great, I mean, this is one of the things, like, we do have beer or alcohol at our events, and we always have food like barbecues or make your own pizza, like where you roll your own dough and put the tomato sauce on it and cheese and then ingredients, and then we put it in a charcoal oven outside, things like that.
Me hungry.
Yeah, so I would call that the fresh hacker party.
Okay.
So you hack your own pizza together, and so I mean, for a community that is great. And they're also non-commercial. We only ask the price for the ingredients. It's not like we put money on top for the management. And people help with that as well. And they also don't want to get paid for that. So that is real. I think that is a little bit the spirit of what you would say for a hackerspace or a makerspace.
Oh.
And in terms of the word choice, I think that comes a lot from makerspace comes from the maker movement, where you say, okay, I want to create something, I want to make something. Where before the maker movement, it would either be a hobby club, it would be like a model airplane club, or people. And I think it stems from the software industry, from hacking systems. But like I said, I mean, I would call the fresh hacker party, the pizza party, a fresh hacker party, because like hacking things together is more like making a root crude of concepts, right? You pick anything around you, what you have laying around, to prove the concept of the idea that you work on. So you don't make a prototype yet. I mean, if you see how the first proof of concept of 5G was created in a lab, of course, really clean. It was done with existing technology. They took a lot of different machines, adjusted the settings, and they had hacked together a 5G proof of concept. And I think hacking is a word where, I mean, if you hack wood, you got pieces of wood. Right. And if you take those pieces of wood and then you create a sculpture from that, you've kind of hacked together a sculpture. And I think that there's a very small margin, or maybe no, between that type of hacker and a maker, because a lot of makers don't have like a professional background. So they pick the things what they can easily find, like Arduinos or breadboards and start to push wires in holes until it works, like a trial and error way. And I think that's the hacker spirit.
I feel like it's kind of like the sort of more generous definition of the word amateur, where it's someone who's like really enthusiastic about something, and they don't necessarily spend a college education getting it. They're just very excited about something. I kind of like to consider myself that, like a professional amateur is sort of would be an ideal job description for me. A couple of questions about what you're talking about. So I didn't realize you started in 2016. My first trip to Shenzhen was 2015, and I came back again in 2018 and saw Troublemaker. And I didn't really realize until now that I was like, oh, that's why we didn't go to Troublemaker on the first trip, because it didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to ask about, I didn't even know that Make Magazine went out of business. I just did a Google search when you looked it up, and it looks like they went out of business in 2019.
Yeah, but also the purpose why. I mean, they were floating on money from big companies. They were floating on sponsorships, and then when that dream didn't pay off for those big corporate sponsors, they didn't get out of it what they want. They pulled their sponsorship out, and that organization didn't have a healthy business model. So without the sponsorship money, they were just out of business. And for me, that came at a really interesting moment, because we were doing well in terms of the numbers of people that we received. I mean, we have received over 16,000 people in 4 years' time. I mean, can you name, maybe besides San Francisco or whatever, can you name any place in the world where they receive those kind of numbers of people? So I was really excited in that time. And even though we were in a perfect location, we were still like a tenant in a co-work space, which sometimes limits us in the things what we want to do, because I mean, we are hackers by nature. We want to do things which with mama and papa don't like. You know, we're naughty kids. So I have been playing with the thought of having my own space. Like I was ready to rent a 3,000 square meter space in one of the buildings, and then create a totally different model of what we were doing, what I thought was what the market needed. And I was considering to look for sponsors, corporate sponsors and whatever. And exactly at that moment, the situation with Make Magazine happened. And I thought, well, we're not going to go that direction. We're going to first build a healthy business model, and then we're just going to pay it ourselves.
Oh, nice. Because I remember people were, so I just remember seeing Make Magazine in I think it was Barnes and Noble, and I'm like, whoa, finally, like a magazine about stuff that I care about. And then I just sort of, I don't even know if I bought that first magazine. And then later it popped up, and there was these events and stuff, and I sort of heard about Mitch there. And I think that was kind of my first foray into making and hacking. But I was never really part of that specific community as much as like I visited a couple of the events, and I actually that's not true. I did work one of their events, but I kept hearing that, oh, they're taking money from the military now, and that sort of like had a bad taste from people. It's interesting that was ultimately not necessarily military, but the sponsorship of these larger corporations that sort of did it under. So that's well, unfortunately, we only have about 8 minutes left, because I haven't paid for the for Zoom, because I didn't know that this was going to be what I was going to use.
Does your Zoom tell you right now that it's only 7? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think you.
Okay. First of all, we can use my Zoom. I have a paid version.
Okay.
But another thing is, like, if it's only 2 people, only you and someone else, it shouldn't say this. This is only.
I know. So I think maybe because I'm recording, they changed the terms and conditions or something. That's really weird. But I mean, that's okay. This is just the experiment, and
Right.
you had a lot of interesting things to say. Wait, what was I had one question. Oh yeah, are you still doing workshops now?
What I've done is I've started a hardware accelerator.
Oh right, okay. So let's save that for next time.
Yes.
What that is, because.
But I mean, at least
Right.
tell why,
Okay.
because like, yes, you mean you, if you're in this industry, if you're one of the people who are actually setting up a hackerspace or makerspace, I mean, this is it's kind of like a calling. I mean, it's like it's something what you really need to do. It's like an urge. And if then the borders close, you only have two options basically. So either you move to the local community, which doesn't really work for us unless we do STEM training for kids. I mean, there is a huge market for STEM training for kids, but that's not necessarily where I want to put my energy.
I'm there with you.
Not a main focus, at least. Or you go online, but when you go online, you must have a business model. And I think an accelerator program, especially the way how we do it, is a perfect extension of the hackerspace. It's something where I wanted to go to anyway in the time when the borders are still open, but I never had the time because I was running around like a chicken without a head for 100 hours a week. I mean,
on behalf of Troublemaker, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was, yeah.
Okay.
Like I made myself the center point of that whole thing,
right.
And that had worked. And the result is that, I mean, everybody needed me and everybody was asking me questions, and I didn't have a life. So, and I was living the life what I wanted, but I didn't have really time to think about things like doing programs. So it's not workshops really as such. It's still like helping people, advising them, putting them in there, connecting them. It's a lot of referrals, and sometimes helping people getting grants if they have a project that really is meaningful. We had one energy harvesting project, which we got 2 million RMB from the Shenzhen government.
Well, one of the ideas I had for this this weekly show was to just go through your accelerator myself and record the progress. I don't know if that's
and then you have to hurry up because we're starting in 4 days from now.
Oh no. Okay. What well, I'm afraid there's only 3.5 minutes left. So I kind of wanted most of this to be talking about what our show is going to be. Instead, we talked about what Troublemakers is, which is fine, which is a great topic.
I think I just want to have fun.
Yeah.
Like we just throw in any question and brag about it or think about it. I don't know how you say that. I mean, English is not my native tongue. Just like
anyway, just talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it would be I mean, that's kind of the point, is I just want to talk to interesting people around this concept, and I think now I'm trying to figure out what the core of that concept is going to be.
I think, and in the beginning we can do that together, and then
yeah,
if there is a topic what we want to do the next week, and one of us knows an interesting person, then we invite them as well.
Cool. Yeah, I have a whole list of people.
I think that is really a digital resemblance of what's happening at the hackerspace. Is that we're accidentally together. Someone has a question, throws it out in the open, and the people who have an answer feedback. It's it's a community discussion point. So I think it's the virtual variant of a hackerspace, let's say.
Actually, I like that idea. So it's essentially, this show is a hackerspace. It's just a weekly. I really like that idea.
Yeah. So and I mean, eventually people can have the tools around them. So I mean, because it
Right.
usually happens, of course, like it doesn't. I mean, it could be in a restaurant or anywhere else, but it mostly happens in the space. So eventually we can have people just bring something they work on, or have some tools around them if they want to.
Very cool.
Emphasis on something.
Well, what
Let's
I'd
see.
like to avoid is, this is my slide presentation and I'm doing a TED Talk. I'd rather it be more of a conversation and a back and forth than a getting a bunch of people doing presentations together.
Yes. Absolutely.
Of course, we could point them to them doing a presentation or something, which is perfectly cool, and maybe as a side project. Okay, I think we just figured out in the last 5 minutes what the show is about. So I'll have to think of names for it. I mean, I guess we could just say the virtual. I mean, I don't want to assume that it could be just Troublemaker virtual or something, but
no.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, so I'll have to come up with a cool name.
I don't like the word virtual in this sense.
Okay, the online. I don't know. We'll brainstorm offline because we're about to be cut off. So thanks for joining our first inaugural podcast with Henk and Torrey, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a great day.
All right. I'll talk to you offline about the Drinking About Sex show.
Yes. Looking forward to that.
Cool. All right. See you in about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, 5 hours. Awesome. Cool. Take care.